Before although this is a continuance of the case, let's go through the same steps as we started the case and go with roll call.
Mr. Henrik?
Here?
Mr. Huntsman?
Here.
Mr. Martinsig?
Here.
Mr. Thomas?
Here.
Mr. P?
Here. And for the record, would you read what the applicant has submitted for the case? Even though it has already been read into the record, I think we need to clarify what we're voting on tonight.
Sure. The purpose of the hearing is so the BZA may review and act on a conditional use request, case number 840, made by TEB Realty LLC, which is the authorized agent of property owner Kerwin Pink LLC. The nature of the request is to seek the conditional use of a 99-bed nursing home with possible expansion to 110 beds on a new 20-acre parcel within Stonehill Village PUD. The applicant is seeking a land use that is not principally permitted per the Stonehill Village PUD restrictions and covenants.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
This is better than the last time. Thank you.
Yes.
Much better.
Background noise.
Yeah, much better. As I stated in the last time we opened the case, that the procedures are going to be, we're going to have various people discuss what the application that is for the application, and they need to read a testament up there.
Okay.
Although this is a continuation, I would like, because I'm not 100% sure who all read the testament, to go ahead and redo that again for the public portion. We will listen to the applicant, we will listen to anyone speaking for, then we will ask for people who would like to speak against or read from record what has been submitted in the intervening time since the first time we were here. And after that portion, we will close the public portion with the exception of having questions asked by the board members, and we'll discuss it and vote on it amongst ourselves. What I'd like to do, the public hearing has been reread. The staff report has been modified, I believe. Could we have that represented into the record?
Yes, of course. As recommended previously, staff feels that the use of this property for an extended care and rehabilitation facility is consistent with the master plan for Stonehill Village as revised legislatively in February of 2016. Most of the staff recommendations about the concept plan that's been submitted are items most appropriately dealt with during the specific site plan approval process. For example, that the vegetated areas at the north end of the property remain, or that the multi-use trail ending in the southwest corner of Claiborne Greens be continued across the new parcel to the school district property line. Further, such recommendations are readily addressed with language such as subject to the approval of any agency or entity having jurisdiction over any aspect of the proposed plan. Therefore, staff does not feel that this board needs to delve into the engineering details of the plan. Such action could lead to further confusion when such details need to be revised due to site conditions or the wishes of other jurisdictional authorities, such as those referred to above. There are a couple of zoning conditions, however, that that staff feels are appropriate for this body to address. Two that are really important and a couple that are related but slightly different, and we'll get to that in a second. First, according to our code, Article 3.02, in the definition of the word lot, we cannot create a parcel without frontage, period. It's that simple. A landlocked parcel is a violation of our code, and no board has the authority to create one. So we recommend a condition that the proposed facility have frontage that complies with this definition prior to opening for business. Second, in support of Township Fire Department policy, staff recommends a condition that the proposed facility have 2 legitimate access points to roadways prior to opening for business. This means that an emergency access, except as a construction entrance during development, is not acceptable as a permanent aspect of this plan. Now, those 2 recommendations then are reflected in, we went ahead, maybe it was a little presumptuous of us, but we went ahead and typed up a model resolution to use as a springboard, but we'll get to that when the time comes. And we enclose those within it, those statements within it. So, it's staff's recommendation that the use be approved, and that the parcel exists subject to these conditions, as I just read them. Are there any questions about those conditions or comments?
On the second point, the 2 legitimate access points to road, remember the subdivision, Trayvine, the New Germany Trayvine, we have that emergence, or that other access point that's a walkway with blocks on either side. Is that considered a legitimate access point?
No,
Something like
not
that?
any longer.
So it has to be truly a road?
That represents a subdivision that was approved prior to the revision of township policy and the revision of fire department regulations. And the code right now, requires 2 access points for commercial properties and 2 access points for residential properties that once they exceed 20 units, 20 dwelling units. Excuse me, 30 dwelling units.
So we wouldn't have been able to approve that?
No.
Provision?
Now, that's a
No.
policy consideration. I suppose the township has the authority to make exceptions. It's not statutory.
Okay.
But it is a policy that we've, because of problems that we had with emergency access points, and I can go into those if you want some detail,
I just wanted to
but,
understand what you meant by that, because we had approved that previously.
no more emergency access.
Okay.
Is basically what the policy comes down to.
Okay.
No more emergency access. If you need to access roads, they're both gonna be real roads.
Okay.
Is there a recommendation on distance apart from each other on those?
No, and as a matter of fact, in very early discussions about this plan, we talked about a horseshoe entrance. The issue is getting emergency vehicles into the facility when one access point is blocked. You can do that with 2 roads side by side. What we have found in fire department experience is that when an access road, an access point is blocked, it's most often blocked by emergency apparatus. There's hoses and other equipment, there are engines parked on the roadway, and then if someone in the interior has a heart attack, we can't get to them if there's only one access road. And so, for many years, emergency access roads, I think the last count I saw was that there were 30 emergency access roadways within the control of the Beavercreek Township Fire Department, which includes the city of Beavercreek and a few other places. And there have been examples, at least 3 that I'm aware of in recent years, where the fire department was unable to gain access to a fire or other emergency because an emergency access point was either not plowed or had a fence across it, or, you know, I mean, if a pathway is there but doesn't get used for years and years and years, and it becomes used as private property, then, you know, it's no longer a functional access point, and we've lost a couple of houses as a result. So, we're just not gonna go there anymore.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, sir.
The specific recommendations, first paragraph, for the record, I totally disagree with us not being able to put conditions on there that the woods, this is to remain untouched. We've done that in the past, and also that, a condition be put on it that, since this is an A1 zoning, conditional use, and that we also ask for the, multi-use trail to continue down onto the property. I don't understand why those things can't be conditional uses or conditions put on this, so that we can be guaranteed that when they do the engineering site development, that they won't just wipe out the woods. Cause the woods is not in the way, is it?
My personal position as the planner here is that you've answered your own question by saying when you get to the site planning, then that gets addressed. Also, if the if the Board of Zoning Appeals places a condition, remember, this is a quasi judicial body.
Yes.
The decisions of this body are final and subject to appeal only to a court.
Right.
And so if we place a condition that has to do with site planning, the engineering that's going on a property, that we then get to the site and has to change, we're stuck.
Well, we're doing that
either-
we're doing that by telling them they gotta have 2 roads. We're doing the same thing there.
That's access to the property, that's not,
That's all site development,
That's-
engineering.
and we're not saying where those access points
Right.
have to be.
But you're saying that that's gonna be one of the conditions, that they gotta have 2 access points.
Yes.
Is it covered under the PUD? The protection of the woods and the, public access?
No, that's a
Well,
whole different ballgame.
Well, it was shown, it was, I'm sorry, it was.
Now, hold on, just, we need to talk internally here
Okay.
first, okay?
I will check in a second, but I believe it's covered in the, master plan revision that we did in 2016.
I mean, we got a piece of A1 zoned land that we wanna put a nursing home facility on.
Well, it's not zoned A1, it's zoned PUD.
It is?
Yeah, it's all part,
Well,
all
why
of,
are we-
all of Stonehill Village is zoned PUD.
Why are we in here as an agricultural conditional use?
I don't understand that question.
Isn't that what we've been looking at? This is, huh? We're in here as a PUD?
Yeah. The land is zoned PUD, and this portion of the PUD is zoned PUD R and O, which, in the legislation that adopted the master plan, again, by legislation, so it's statutory, includes, as I said in my previous staff report, I quoted, quote, "a mix of retail, business/office, community services, and institutional/public uses.
Okay.
Commercial uses will focus on small-scale local neighborhood stores. Office space will be marketed as professional office, medical office use. Community/public uses could include a church site, branch library, etc." That's from the trustee resolution approving the revised master plan, and therefore, has the status of, being a statutory provision. That is, it's part of our zoning code.
Right,
That
but-
all of that is permitted.
Okay.
Okay, question. If we approve it, and in the language, it's something like we approve, this as filed with whatever changes. When, what they filed to us stated that the woods were gonna stay the same and everything else, does that lock it in? Does that say that from that point on, they can't do anything? If we pass it as submitted, they were the ones that submitted to us saying this is what it's gonna be, and we approved it as submitted, does that lock and protect the woods?
I don't think that would legally protect the woods. I think that, and Dawn, you can help me if you want to, I think that protection is locked in at the point of site plan approval.
But the only way we
Yeah,
would,
I mean, well, they have, keep in mind what they're presenting now is more of a, concept and, a concept plan. At the site plan approval is where you get into some of those nitty gritty details. And so I don't know by just simply saying, submit it, you know, it's approved as submitted, that you're gonna guarantee that those woods aren't going to be touched.
so how can we're asked to, and this is really confusing to me, we're asked to approve a concept and not an actual thing, is what you're telling me. You can't have one
No,
without the
you're right.
other.
You're wanting us to approve a concept
Yes,
plan
you-
that doesn't even
but
show us
you-
roads.
A conditional use, okay, based on a concept. So you're simply being asked here to approve what is being proposed as a use. At the site plan level is where you get into those other details with respect to how the use itself will be developed.
So we can put no conditions on this?
No, you can put conditions on a conditional use permit, as long as they are conditioned upon the use.
So, essentially what we're talking about here is, we included, and the applicant included that concept plan of the site as a way to help you visualize what it may look like. But this board is really trying to determine the answer to this question: is that parcel able to have some sort of, doesn't matter what it looks like, nursing facility operating on it? Does the zoning code allow for that use? Take away the concept site plan, you have no idea what it looks like. You just know that it will be a nursing facility, and you have to answer the question, is that allowed on that parcel or not?
And that's
So
why,
all these questions about what it eventually will look like and whether the vegetation along the north will stay, that's really, as we've been talking about, that goes to the zoning commission for the specific site plan review, which does care about what it eventually will look like and how it will function. This is just, can any nursing facility be located on that property? So that's important to keep in mind, okay?
So you also have to remember that that is a major concern for the residents of MI Homes development,
right.
that woods
Correct.
remains, and you can't blame them.
Oh, no
Or some
one,
part of it remains.
no one does
Okay,
blame
they
them.
want a parking lot in the future.
Correct.
I'm just trying to hear,
When these plans are,
I know we're not developing the site. I
when the
understand.
plans are fleshed out, don't forget, the plans, once they are detailed and real plans rather than concepts, they're gonna be subject to at least 2 more public hearings, one before the zoning commission and one before the trustees. Before the applicant can even submit the plans to the county. And then a whole different set of approvals then will kick in. Can it be connected to the sewers? Does it have access to all the necessary utilities? Is the county engineer on board? So on and so forth. Drainage plan, that was a big deal with the schools. So there's gonna be ample opportunity for public input into the details of the site planning when that engineering gets done.
Right, but we also listen to public input in this meeting at the BZA.
Right.
For what reason?
Well,
If they got 2 more times to come in and
because those bodies do not have the authority to approve the use of this land for this purpose. You do. This board has the authority to approve the use. That's the meaning of the term conditional use. It's not like a variance hearing where you can place any conditions on the approval of a variance that you want to. Or an administrative appeal where you're being very specific and down into the nitty-gritty of a decision made by a zoning, a staff member or whomever. This is use, land use. And the conditions I've recommended, that staff has recommended, have to do with the fact that this parcel can't be created if it doesn't have access. That's a use issue. And access, in this case, in the case of Beavercreek Township and the fire code, includes 2 access points. That's why I've limited my recommendations to establishing those conditions. If those conditions aren't approved, we can't create the parcel.
Now, if I understand what you're saying, we can say, that you have to have road access, have to have, front footage. But we can't tell them how it's gonna be. Is that correct? We just say you have to do it, their site plans will be submitted to say how they're gonna do it.
so we're supposed to tell them they gotta have two entrances, but we can't tell them anything else about what to do with the land.
Hey, Ed, am I allowed to
I'm
speak?
lost.
Yeah.
As a board member, I'm allowed to speak. Actually, you're not necessarily locked in. If you put something in there, you can always come back and appeal it. You're not totally locked in. That can always happen. So you're not locked in. But I see no reason you can't put conditions such as keeping the trees on the north side boundary or what. There's no reason you can't do that. As a conditional use, we can put conditions on conditional use. We always have. So don't feel like you're locked in. But I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, I know we're not getting into developing the floodplain.
No.
Water retention and all those systems, we're not gonna get into the.
But they've stated they're gonna
we
do
can't
this.
dictate what the
I
building's
see
gonna
no
look
reason to
like.
put that in there. Don't expect the zoning board or the trustees to necessarily put it in.
Right.
You know, right now, you have the opportunity to make those conditions
Right,
that
but
they
my-
presented.
My question was back to Ed, and that the board recommended that we don't delve into that.
You don't have to do, you can do what
Right.
you feel is right.
Okay.
You know. We've done that in the past. In the past, Ed has made recommendations.
Right.
We don't always
Oh,
do
no,
what,
no, I understand.
you know,
Okay.
Ed,
There's.
Hey, I'm way too
because-
old to invest ego in any of these things.
Yeah, I'm not.
I'm not gonna take those
The
things
big
personally.
difference on this case is, this is a PUD.
Yeah.
And there's already a whole host of restrictions and limitations
Yeah.
that are associated with the master plan, with the PUD itself.
Yeah.
And we're not privy to all of them, we just don't understand them,
That's right.
okay?
And we're not
That's right.
making
That's right.
the decision based on those either. We're
Right.
making on
Right.
the zoning.
Right, we need, is this an appropriate use for this parcel of
Right.
land?
Right.
And if it isn't, because it doesn't have the correct frontage, that is something that if you're going to use this parcel of land for this conditional use, you better damn well have the full frontage. And the same thing with the, two ways blowing in and out.
Now,
So-
and I can understand where Ed's coming from, may not disagree with doing it without protection. But if we put conditions and say, okay, you have to maintain the wooded lots, and if something happens and they have to take half the trees out, they can't do it, it just ends it, because we've already said this is.
You can't without them appealing it.
Yeah, they'd have to appeal,
They would have to
absolutely.
appeal it. So
Absolutely.
that's all. I mean, there is a process to where they can do it, you know.
All right, well, why don't we, hear from the applicant, and, they were preparing other, responses to questions that came up when we first opened the meeting. Who would like to speak for the application today?
You want me to, I can just,
Please.
I, Greg Miller, at 12500 Reed Hartman Highway, Cincinnati, Ohio, solemnly swear that the statements I'm about to make before the Beavercreek Township Board of Zoning Appeals are the truth to the best of my knowledge and belief.
Thank you.
I mean, I have the same prepared statement as I did the last time.
It's okay.
I don't know if you want me to read it, I don't wanna
That's okay, go right ahead.
repeat the same thing. So, again, we are the healthcare management group. We operate 7 facilities in southwest Ohio and northern Kentucky. We're a family-owned, operated business for over 45 years. Our 2 newest facilities, Covenant Village and Green Township, on the west side of Cincinnati, and Arlington Point, which is in Middletown, Ohio, are prototypes for what we're proposing to build in Beavercreek Township. Some highlights include all private rooms, full-size beds, Tempur-Pedic mattresses, refrigerators in each room, private showers and bathrooms in each room, and state-of-the-art rehab center. Most residents will go home after a short stay, however, we'll be able to take care of long-term residents as well. We expect to create over 100 jobs in the township, and our investment will be in excess of $12 million. We like to be good neighbors to the communities. Some of the things we've done, which, since this is part of a PUD and some of these already here, are construct basketball courts, recreation areas. We delivered Thanksgiving baskets to the local community for families in need. We've become involved in the Chamber of Commerce, Easter egg hunts, Christmas tree lightings, and so forth and so on. We really like to become part of the community. We're a family-run business. Our offices are in Cincinnati. The owner is in Cincinnati. We're in Greater Cincinnati, I should say. And we're looking at an opportunity to expand to an area which we feel has a need for this type of service based on internal market studies and so forth and so on. So we ask that you can make a recommendation on the change of PUD use. Roger Nash and Buck Withers are our architects. They have developed the site plan, which I think you've seen. We wouldn't foresee this changing dramatically whatsoever from what we have proposed unless engineers were to make recommendations, or there would be some other body to make it. But in terms of the woods, we know the woods are there. We don't plan on taking the woods away. We won't take the woods away. And I understand the importance of having that buffer there as well. Ideally, we would want the facility to be as close to the proposed road as possible. That way there's less setback and less infrastructure that needs to be put in, because it is sets back pretty far from the main road. I don't know if, Roger, you want to take the stand, or if you have, I mean, I can't remember how we did this with do you want to ask me questions now? Or?
We will, when we finish the public portion of it,
We'll get
we
into-
will ask for clarification from each of the people who testify. Perfect, so.
Yeah, I'll get up and do a couple of comments. I mean, you've all seen the.
Could you read the attestment
Yeah.
again? Thank you, appreciate it.
I, Roger Nash, 1250 Chambers Road, Columbus, Ohio, solemnly swear that the statements I am about to make before the Beavercreek Township Board of Zoning Appeals are the truth to the best of my knowledge and belief. Yeah, I was just gonna maybe hit a couple highlights of what we presented as the project narrative with our application. Greg kind of talked about the size of the facility. This would be a, nursing home licensed by the state of Ohio, with all the fire protection systems and fire alarms and all that sort of thing. Based on this parcel and the power line easements running through and where there's existing wooded areas, we've, kind of found a sweet spot in the middle there, at least for this concept plan to place the building and the parking, and we've done an analysis already of how many parking spaces are required for the zoning code, and this is a building we've built before, so we know pretty much what that footprint's gonna be, so even as a concept plan, like Greg said, it, really shouldn't vary that much from what we've drawn here. We know where the utilities are and things like that, so. I did wanna point out that, we did have a Zoom meeting with some of the Stonehill Village neighbors, a couple weeks ago? Well, maybe, yeah, a week ago, yeah. And, along with, the developer, and got some good feedback and interaction there. And I think, it seemed like they understand the project a little bit more now and seem, maybe a few less questions about what the proposal is. And like I was starting to say before, most of that wooded area is in what's called dedicated open space as part of the PUD plan. So we don't have any intention of, really trying to change any of what was established in the PUD already. I guess that's all.
Where is the roads, or how are you planning on having the two access points?
Well, I guess that's something I wanted to question was, are two access points required right to the property line? Or it seemed like at the last meeting, we talked about, well, if there were the access to Zayton Xenia Road and the road over to Turbine was completed, then that would be two access points, but there's still only one drive into the building and into the drive around the building, so I'm not sure if that qualifies or not.
So there wouldn't be a driveway in from the road that goes north and south, the proposed road into, what is that, Claiborne?
Oh, that extension up to Claiborne Green, we haven't shown anything there, I mean,
Yeah, there's a road coming in from Trayvine, heading west.
The two extension roads is this road proposes to carry out to Trayvine, straight out. This road is on the site master plan, would not be built at this time, from what I understood. It connects the neighborhood to this area?
You got a road that's gonna parallel Dayton Xenia?
Yes, this road right,
Yeah.
yes, this here.
Okay.
and that's, again, that's been actually the 2000, an older master plan kinda had this road coming, actually extending farther and coming down about here, but then in 2016, this 50 acres was, put over to the school and.
Excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt, is that the developer's responsibility to put that in? Or is that gonna be your responsibility to put that in?
I guess we've worked it out with the developer to come up with how to do it in a joint effort.
Cause I'm assuming that's gonna be where you're gonna get your road frontage from, is that correct?
Yeah, so this, in our application, we had thought, we had just listed this as being an egress easement, but based on, other discussions, sounds like that actually has to be a dedicated right of way and real road.
It'll be dedicated to the county. All these roads eventually become county maintained.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
or township.
Township,
Yeah.
Yeah, that I understand.
So two entrances in off of the new road would be fine, right?
So that was my question, does it mean we have to have another driveway, over here somewhere besides this main drive, or we get
Yeah, or do a
two
boulevard.
drives 10 feet apart?
Well, that's why I asked, and you said there's no requirement for distance, so as long as they have two entrances or access.
Could it be a boulevard?
Right. It can be, as long as if one roadway, and now, I'm not the expert in interpreting fire code
Right.
issues, but what I've seen happen before is that boulevards with a little bit of separation can work.
But I think we wanna maintain the overall spirit of the I mean, we don't have one boulevard in the whole development per se, you know what I mean? So that's why we didn't come up with that plan. I mean, that might be the only boulevard in the whole frontage plan.
There's a boulevard.
Well,
My house, the
you don't
short one.
necessarily mean this whole
There's a short,
thing, but
there's a
maybe
short
this,
one.
this little section here.
Yeah, there's-
If this little section here is a boulevard, so that if one side gets blocked, then you're still
And
25
and
foot
whether,
wide.
again, here we go with the site planning,
Right.
that's a decision for the fire department to make, when we get to the
Right.
site plan approval process.
What will they approve as to legitimate access?
Right.
Okay, but there are two, major roads that you will be able to access it from.
Right.
One that's going to be built and the other is Dayton Xenia. Am I reading that correctly?
No, because Dayton Xenia is right here.
Yeah.
This is gonna be one road off of Dayton Xenia.
Right, but then the second would be the secondary road
Yeah.
that you have.
Over
The
to.
Trayvine.
Right,
one
so
that
there's
comes
two
over here.
different roads.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay,
Right.
There's some legitimate roads. to
And there's
go.
logistics we have to work out, what works best for the, you know.
Okay.
So yeah, two roads, I mean, that's the condition, there has to be two roads. I mean, how they
Actually-
get the two roads will come out when we do the site.
If I was sitting on the fire department or the planning, once that second road, which is gonna be their frontage, I believe, from the Dayton Xenia road, that part of it, before you get to that main road, I wouldn't count as an access. It's from the main, that one main road that's got your frontage, going actually into the facility itself.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's nice you're gonna go all the way to Dayton Xenia, but since you're crossing the new road to get in, I think that's where your exit and entrance as far as the, county is going to be.
Can I write on this?
What,
Yeah.
you see what I'm saying?
Well, one of the other thoughts was is to take this here.
Exactly.
Well, and that's what I'm saying.
Out of here and into this road.
Yeah.
Done.
That's what I said,
Done.
the Dayton Xenia is nice, but I think what they're gonna look at is where it intersects, the one road that's gonna be started, and they're gonna look at that as maybe one
And
of
we'll
the
get that all
main
worked out.
entrances.
We'd like to have.
Sure, right.
Theoretically, we'd like to have an ambulance delivery entrance, so that's what we use the second driveway for primarily.
Okay, we'll get to it with discussion. Anything else, Rob?
That's all I had.
Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak for the application tonight? All right, is there anyone wishing to speak against? Do we have anything submitted to the record in writing from the continuance?
So we did not, despite some initial activity, I believe the, addressing it through the HOA and through, those channels seem to have kind of quelled any concerns. We did not receive any comments to comments@beavercreektownship.org, the email address that we publicized a few times during the meeting. We didn't receive any other emails or phone communications or anything to indicate that there was opposition that isn't there tonight, so.
Okay, okay. Does anybody have any neutral comments that they would like to, to do as a support or a detraction? All right, not hearing anything from the public, we'll close the public portion and, discuss it amongst the members of the board. I'll go ahead and start. Sure. I think what they're proposing is something that's really needed. What they've got as they're showing, I don't see any problem. I think it would be a good neighbor in there. It's difficult to sit down there and discuss it as conditional without getting into an area where we shouldn't be, which is the site plan. Yeah. So just on what we're here for, I don't see, I think a conditional, use, fits, and I think it would be a good, neighbor to bring into Beaver Creek. We're not getting any younger ourselves, and you're looking at that, right?
And I'm gonna take offense, 'cause I.
Yeah. And speaking for the neighborhoods, since I live in Stonehill Village, this fits right into where we would like to go. And dealing with the nutters, sometimes it's their plans, and I can understand being in business, what they're looking at doing. But this is a nice, it would be a nice addition to the area.
Okay.
Oh, I second that. And they're gonna have two fire stations within 2 miles of it. So,
Jeez.
That's good for, emergency vehicles, if there's a problem.
Yeah, no kidding.
I really like it because it's close to the elementary school and junior high. And that association could really be good for them. And, we get the guys and gals, show choir and everything there, and you need to take advantage of it.
Mm-hmm.
I see nothing but good there. I agree with your 2 points that we should put on there. I think we could highlight, they said they would abide by, but we can highlight that they would abide by. And those seem to be all I would ask for.
Sure. Not this time.
Not this time?
Not this time.
Okay. All right, well,
If anybody on the board wishes to use language from staff recommendations for the making of a resolution, for the crafting of a resolution, we took the liberty of writing it out. Certainly, this board is free to make alterations and revisions to that resolution. We don't mean to be shoving anything down anybody's throat, but
Where do I find any information on RPUD, RB? In the book?
We don't.
in the code,
No.
it's scattered throughout. It is within residential districts, it's within, some of the business language. I know the office district has, each zoning district contains a chapter at the end of that district that encourages the use of PUD and allows for a PUD to be established with those specific uses in mind. Is that clear? I know that there's not a specific chapter within, a subchapter within Article 17, which is the article that talks about PUDs, called PUD RB. But we do have other property in the township zoned that way. And.
I mean, you read through the PUD stuff and there's all kinds of restrictions. Height restrictions, that I hope they're aware of.
And there are additional restrictions, as was mentioned,
And conditions that we put on.
in the approval of the master plan, which was approved legislatively again. So it's part of the code, it's statutory.
On that, are you required to submit your design to the architectural review for the development for Stonehill, the design review board?
I believe there is, yes.
Okay.
There's some, various materials and something like that.
Right,
Yes.
trust me, I'm very familiar
Yeah.
with requirements.
That's a condition.
This is what they submitted.
Okay.
Try to craft a motion?
Well, I like it written there, but we would like a 5th condition.
Go ahead, try.
Which is pulling out exactly what they submitted. Two sentences. fifth condition, open space designated in Stonehill Village concept plan will be maintained on a new parcel. The designated open space on the parcel is primarily as utility easements, however, existing wooded areas and wetland type areas will be maintained as well. That's what they submitted, I think we can call it out as a fifth condition and go with what you said.
Can you read that again, please?
Yeah, may we ask you to speak up just a little bit, Mr. Martinsek?
Well, it's hard. Not to spit on people and speak up.
Oh, you can spit on me.
You were already yelling, weren't you?
We'll point out the two sentences.
I have that document here too.
I know you don't like to have that one there, but I think we've done.
That's okay, it was only intended as a springboard.
So on number two, the proposed facility has two legitimate access points to roadways prior to opening for business. How about that the proposed facility has two legitimate access points approved by the fire department? How's that?
That's fine.
Question again.
Access point,
It's very well put. But my question is, it says it's tied, which should be the Stonehill Village concept plan. If the developer of Stonehill, which they've done on numerous occasions, want to change that plan, that kind of knocks that completely out of any requirement, correct? If they come out with a new concept plan?
I don't think so. It's tied to the plan that's in force at the time of adoption. So it would be tied to the plan that's active right now.
You know yourself, how many times has
Right.
Stonehill changed their concept plan?
Right,
already?
exactly. As amended in February of 2016,
Yeah.
that version of the master plan.
I'm okay with. Point that two sentences to be done. But he would add that because.
How do we do this? If we want to read this into the record as the motion by the board member?
Right.
And add to or subtract from anything you wish? You wanna try? Go ahead and.
It was intended for that purpose, to
You wanted
make
to
it
change
easier
the
to
Don't
wording?
read.
talk loud enough, remember.
Take it off.
There's a lot of words here. Yeah. What is it?
Yeah, but they're good words.
What do we, why don't we start this out? No, we go on the whole thing there, right?
You're just gonna add to it, aren't you?
What?
You're just gonna add to it.
But we don't read all this stuff. That's-
No, just the motions,
The motions are,
okay?
right? There are 5 motions that we're trying to get at here, right?
Conditions.
One
Conditions,
motion,
5
okay.
conditions.
There's, that.
I just saying with you, there's only one motion with
Right.
different conditions on it.
Right.
Motion there has 5 conditions.
Right.
Wow, that is nice.
It won't last long.
Oh, is that what it is?
Go ahead.
Well, what are we, I gotta get the word right. I'm proposing that we approve the conditional use with 5 conditions.
Correct.
1, that the proposed facility has frontage that complies with the definition of lot in Article 3.02 of the Beavercreek Township zoning resolution prior to opening for business. 2, that the proposed facility legitimate access point to roadways prior to opening for business. 3, that any emergency or construction access point provided during development of the parcel is acceptable as a permanent access point. And 4, that the proposed facility is subject to approval of any agency or entity.
Mr. Martinsek, we're unable to hear you up here, so would you mind speaking in the direction of the microphone here
Nah,
on the camera? I think that.
I can't do that because I'll be spitting on everybody.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Would you read it into here?
All right.
I don't like to be interrupted, so I'm done. I'm done.
You want me to do it now?
You go ahead. I'm done.
They have a hard time hearing me.
It's getting frustrating here.
So we have 5 conditions.
Can you hear?
Hello? You muted.
Yeah, so far so good, Leo, thank you.
Let's see, so I make a proposal to approve case number 840 with 5 conditions. 1, that the proposed facility has frontage that complies with the definition of lot in Article 3.02 of the Beavercreek Township zoning resolution prior to opening for business. Number 2, that the proposed facility has 2 legitimate access points to roadways prior to opening for business. Number 3, that the emergency or construction access point provided during development of the parcel is not acceptable as a permanent access point. Number 4, that the proposed facility is subject to the approval of any agency or entity having jurisdiction over any aspect of the plan. Do you want that, Spawn?
Yep.
And number 5, open space designated in the Stonehill Village concept plan will be maintained on the new parcel. The designated open space on the parcel is primarily in utility easements, however, existing wooded areas and wetland type areas, I would put, will be left untouched and maintained as well.
Okay?
Is that it?
Yes.
Yes, motion's been made, do I hear a second?
I'd second that.
It's been second,
Emil? Okay.
Further
Are we
discussion?
good to take the vote?
is there any other discussion on the motion?
Any further discussion?
You look quizzitive.
The last, in maintained, that's the last. Are we saying they're gonna be responsible to maintain them, or they have to be maintained?
They just have to be maintained, that they assure that it will be maintained. Call for a vote?
Mr. Henrik?
Yes.
Mr. Huntsman?
Yes?
Mr. Martinsek?
Yes?
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. P?
Abstain.
Nope. Thank you, sir. All right.
Okay,
And can I have Ed make a copy of that 5th one for me, so I make sure I get all of the wording?
you have it, don't you, Ed?
I have it, yes.
Okay. Pass
Oh,
it.
he has it, okay. Thank you.
Well, then,